Hey guys, Spud here, and today I figured we'd jump in and make a quick and dirty video discussing how to diagnose and then subsequently fix one of the most annoying game-breaking bugs currently present in the DCS F4U 1D Corsair. And thankfully, it's a pretty darn easy fix. The bug in question here is the taxi controllability bug that makes it so that way you cannot, no matter what you do, whether the tail wheel is unlocked, you're using a ton of power, no power, differential braking, tail wheel locked or unlocked, doesn't matter what you do, you just simply cannot get the Corsair to turn. And in all of my testing and then looking through a bunch of people discussing this bug in the ED forums and honestly really arguing about it in the ED forums, I've definitely come to the conclusion that this is due to a broken weather vaning effect on the ground while taxiing. So what is the weather vaning effect? Well guys, here in a tail dragger airplane, we of course have the center of gravity of the aircraft, which is basically more or less where the pilot's butt in the seat in the cockpit is behind the main landing gear. And the main landing gear is the pivot point of the aircraft as we're taxiing, which makes tailwheel aircraft particularly subject to the weather vaning effect, which is of course our vertical stabilizer here working as a giant sail essentially and grabbing any wind and pulling the tail and thus weather vaning the nose of our aircraft into the wind. And so here in the Corsair, in the current build, this is very, very, very broken. And it really over-exaggerates this effect to the point where you cannot turn away from any wind while taxiing, no matter how hard you try. So before we jump into the cockpit for a demonstration here, I wanted to see what you guys thought of the brand new work-in-progress skin bringing the F4U 1D Corsair to the fictional Burning Sands universe and the fictional Royal Daimar Air Force. We can see here that this particular Corsair belongs to the number 91 Krakens of the Red Sea Squadron, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion whether you believe the decals for RDAF or the Royal Daimar Air Force there in English as well as the Arabic decal should be turned over to white to match the Bort number as well as the squadron emblem on the engine cowling there. I'm kind of torn on that myself, and I'm also kind of wondering if I should change the Age of Sail Man of War decal on the tail there to match the white as well. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. So let's jump in the cockpit for a little demo here. We've got the wind coming straight down the runway from a heading of roughly about 010, and so we're going to demonstrate this over-exaggerated weather vaning effect. So let's open up the controls indicator so you guys can see what I'm doing on my stick, my throttle of course, and my rudders. So we've got the wind coming from left to right, and you'll see the aircraft start to weather vane to the left almost immediately as we start to taxi. So stick back for good tail wheel fundamentals here. We're going to push up the throttle, and boom, right off the bat, the airplane is trying to tail or weather vane to the left-hand side, but because we have the tail wheel locked, it's not doing it quite as badly. But even with the tail wheel locked, with differential braking, we won't be able to turn to the right-hand side. So let's show how bad it gets once we unlock the tail wheel. And we start to push the throttle up, and boom, there it is, right off of the bat. You know, full right-hand rudder, full right brake, and we can just barely get the nose to come to the right-hand side. And once we get to roughly about perpendicular with the direction of the wind, or 90 degrees off our beam, it is impossible to turn to the right-hand side, no matter how much power we give it. And if we start to turn back to the left some more, and we get lined up further into the wind, then of course we can turn back to the right a little bit, but again, once we get 90 degrees to the direction of the wind or so, it just stops and there's no way we can keep turning to the right-hand side. And if you're then thinking, oh, well, no problem, I'll just make it 270, you're going to start to weather vane back to the other side, and you're no longer going to be able to keep turning. So it's very, very annoying, and it just is a horrible, horrible, over-exaggerated weather vaning effect. And it should not be nearly this bad in this heavy of a tailwheel aircraft. And even my little Yak 55 that I fly in real life and that I own is not subject to nearly this much weather vaning effect, even though it is much lighter than a Corsair. So let's jump over to the mission editor and show you guys how you can fix this, because this bug fix is more on the mission maker than on your Warbird pilots themselves in your missions. So we can see our Corsair here at Ramon International on the Sinai map. And if we go over to the weather tab here, all we got to do is just make sure that our wind velocity at the airport where our Warbird pilots are is below about 7 knots. About 7 knots is the threshold that I've found so far in my testing where this bug starts to get really, really bad. So let's bring the wind down to 5 knots or so, and we'll jump back into the cockpit and show you guys that this bug no longer affects us. Now, one thing that you guys out there who are making missions for your Warbird pilots need to be very, very careful of is we can see up at 1,600 feet here, the wind is still at 10 knots. So if you have some Corsair pilots over here at Ovda Airfield that has a field elevation of 1,400 feet, they are still going to be subject to this very annoying bug. So you're going to want to make sure that this wind velocity up here at 1,600 feet is down below 7 knots. Always keep in mind that these elevation values for the wind here in the DCS mission editor are in MSL, not AGL. Very, very important to remember. So let's jump back in the cockpit of our Corsair and demonstrate how this bug no longer affects us now that we have the wind velocity pulled down a bit. Alright, here we go. Back into the cockpit of the same Corsair, spawning in the same spot. Get the cockpit opened, prop levers all the way forward, cowl flaps all the way open on the ground, unlock the wings, spread the wings, unlock the tail wheel. We'll go ahead and bring RPM up a little bit so that way she's not idling so rough. Alright. Wing fold flags are flush. Lock the wings, good to go. We'll go ahead and leave the wing folding mechanism in the spread position. Open up the controls indicator once again so you guys can see what I'm doing with all of my controls. And we'll start our taxi. Again, the wind is coming from 90 degrees off of our longitudinal axis here. So before we were starting to weather vane to the left-hand side, and we're just taxiing straight. A little bit of left-turning tendencies there to be expected, maybe a little over-exaggerated. But as you can see, full right-hand rudder, a little bit of differential braking. We can break that tail wheel right out of her detent and turn to the right-hand side away from the crosswind, no problem there. And that is how you fix this bug. It is that easy, and you'll notice we're on a paved ramp/apron area here at Ramon International Airport on the Sinai map, but if you're at an unpaved or grass strip on the World War II Marianas map or the Normandy map, this bug can be fixed in exactly the same manner. So just keep that in mind, and thanks for watching, guys. I hope this helps you guys out, and I hope it helps you guys enjoy flying the Corsair that much more. And I'm very excited to bring the Corsair to the fictional Burning Sands universe in the near future here. And like I said, give me that feedback on what you guys think on the black decals on the new Corsair skin for the Royal Daimar Air Force, and we'll see if we can incorporate your guys' ideas. Thanks for watching, guys. Fly safe out there and enjoy this beautiful game as always.